As a poet, it thrills me to see young people sharing poems publicly. And as a teacher, I marvel at this display of hard work and discipline. And as a mother of 3 young children, I can't help but be proud of all of you who have the guts to get up on stage and give voice to what moves you. Years ago, I was a 7th grade English teacher, and I used to have my students memorize a poem of their choice during our annual poetry unit. And I always introduced the assignment with an anecdote about a prisoner in Ireland I had once read about, who spent 17 years in solitary confinement. And when asked what helped him endure such intense isolation, he had said that as a boy he had been required to learn by heart dozens of poems over the course of his education. He said that those poems came flooding back to him in the darkness of his cell, and that they provided solace, sparked memories, and helped him remain connected to the life he had once known. I'm certain they also contained a measure of beauty or humor or music, and I wouldn't be surprised if they became like friends to him for the comfort and companionship they must have provided. So when my students would groan and say they didn't ever expect to end up in solitary confinement for 17 years and why did they need to memorize a poem, and every year they groaned, I'd say, well look, here is a man who was stripped of everything but the contents of his own mind. And it was those very contents that became this most important source of strength. So his example shows us that the things we know, what we learn, and the memories we make and keep are truly the only things that cannot be taken from us. And so while it's unlikely that we'll find ourselves in such dire circumstance, his experience reveals a compelling incentive to go out into the world, as you are, and learn and experience as much as we can for as long as we live, for that ultimately is the source of our life force. Does that mean we should be memorizing poems all the time? I don't know, maybe it does. We all might be better for it, and why not? We memorize passwords and PIN numbers and combinations and songs that we don't even like that sometimes linger in our heads for days and drive us crazy. So why not poems that we choose, which promise richer reward for sure? But I prefer the term commit to memory rather than memorize, because commitment connotes belief or faith in something, a relationship. And memories are in part what makes us who we are. Even the phrase learn by heart gets closer to the act of knowing a poem so well that you can share it aloud without having it in front of you. So by committing to a poem in this way, you let it get inside of you. And sometimes it stays forever, whether you like it or not. As is the case of William Wordsworth's I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, a poem I was made to memorize in Mr. Kim's 6th grade English class at I-70 in New York City in 1980. I didn't get to choose the poem, and I really hated it, and I really hated Mr. Kim for making me stand up and say it. For I was shy, and I still am a little shy because it's not easy to get up and speak in front of people. Even so, I remember the process, and even some lines, and then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. I remember stealing time alone with my sheet, sometimes in front of the mirror, sometimes speaking into a hairbrush, sometimes shaking, sometimes not. But I did it, and looking back, it was a small but important milestone. How do I know? Because the memory of it comes flooding back, and I remember not being quite as shy afterwards. So today, these young people from all over this little gem of a state have committed poems to memory and will share them out loud. They inspire us not only by their hard work and their discipline and their guts to get on stage, but by their willingness to commit to something they believe in and that they deem worth their time. As the saying goes, love is time spent. And the drive behind their love is, I'm sure, as distinct as each of them. But for each, we are certain it took time. It took me time to learn by heart the lines I'll speak today. And I'm only a little embarrassed to say that once again I rehearsed with a hairbrush, and that I brought my paper just in case. So just before I struggle to remember my lines, I attended a panel in Boston a couple weeks ago for the poet Maria Rokeyser, who it would have been her 100th birthday. And there was a big auditorium of people. And the poet who was beginning the panel began with this really long round of applause for Muriel Rukeyser. And she asked each of us to think about her poems or her life and to clap with her in mind. And it was fabulous. So I'd like, before I recite, before we go on to you, for everybody to just think of the person who brought them here and the work and the time and the love that they spent preparing for this day. However it turns out, it's really quite an achievement. And for us to just give a really long round of applause with these people in mind. Leaves of Grass. I am the poet of the body. I am the poet of the soul. The pleasures of heaven are with me. The pains of hell are with me. The first I engraft and increase upon myself. The latter I translate into a new tongue. I am the poet of the woman, the same as the man. And I say it is as great to be a woman as to be a man. And I say there is nothing greater than the mother of men. I chant a new chant of dilation or pride. We have had ducking and deprecation long enough. I say development. Size is only development. Have you outstripped the rest? Are you the president? It is a trifle. They will more than arrive there, each one, and still pass on. Thank you.